Hi everyone, welcome back to Scale Up Podcast. Today we've got Michael Johnson, the founder of Sereno IT.
Michael's had a lot of experience growing high-performing sales teams. Today he's going to share a lot of those experiences with us.
And I think that can be probably one of the biggest challenges that a business owner will have when hiring a salesperson.
That's not like their favourite thing to do in a day.
No, it's never fun. My recommendation for a business owner to not hire a salesperson first.
What they do is they throw them in a seat, throw a grenade at them and go, let's crack on.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Replacement life cycles to a business owner, because they're not going to give a shit about any of that. We allowed to swear?
Yeah, we're allowed to. Okay, cool, good.
Yeah, they don't give a shit about any of that.
So it's a bit more advanced than getting someone to sell you a pen then.
Little bit more advanced, although that works. It's not about boring with all the stuff, giving them loads of data and information so they feel they have decision paralysis. It doesn't help anyone. That, it takes 2 minutes, but then you've got that personal approach and other people aren't doing it, you'll stand out. And that's our point.
Scale Up, the podcast for driving growth in your MSP, delivered by industry experts.
Thanks for coming and joining us, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, I need to stop that. Like, you're known to me as MJ, not Michael. So we'll just go MJ.
Cool. Okay.
So, MJ, tell us a bit about your journey for the people that don't know you.
Yeah, so I've been working in sales within MSPs for the last 12 years. Started as a straight out of graduating uni as a junior account manager for this chap, who taught me absolutely nothing. No, I'm joking. We'll get onto that. But yeah, then I worked my way up. I then ended up running an account management team. So I'm mainly from the account management side. And that was a team of about 5 account managers. Then became a sales manager and took on the new business side. And at that point, I was about managing maybe 6 people. I then worked for a much larger MSP that was all across the UK. And at that point, I was a sales director. And I was managing about 12 different people responsible for account management and new business. And then in the last 2.5 years, I started my own MSP. So I've gone through the sales side, I've helped grow businesses and help them scale. And now I'm trying to do it for my own company.
Amazing. So during that scaling, what's the key takeaways that we can talk about here? What's the key things that you think people need to think about? Because often we're talking about a printer, an MSP owner, hasn't come from a sales background.
Yeah, and that's an important point because I think a lot of MSP owners are technical people. I'm an exception, but I think a lot of them do come from a technical background. And a lot of these people are they're detailed, they're process driven, they can do administration. Now, if we look at what salespeople are, they are not those kinds of people. A salesperson generally they're quite socially engaging. They're quite, they're more like lone wolves. They go off and do their own thing. They're not necessarily the people that want to do administration. They're not necessarily the people that want to follow process and rules and things. And that can become a bit of a challenge when you're first hiring a salesperson, because unless you want to become a micromanager and be on top of the salesperson the whole time, you need to give them structure, you need to give them processes. And I think that can be probably one of the biggest challenges that a business owner will have when hiring a salesperson is before you look to hire, you need to really make sure that you understand your sales process from start to finish and that you have your products and services aligned and that everyone is singing from the same hymn sheet, essentially.
So it kind of sounds like you've gone through the whole journey from a small team to a larger team to an even bigger team, and now you're back in a small team again in your own startup. It was pretty impressive hearing about your growth. You've gone from kind of year one 200 to 900k, 900k to 1.5 million. That's pretty aggressive, and by all means, most people would probably be happy at that level of growth. When did you decide in your startup to hire the first salesperson? Because if you think of most MSPs or smaller MSPs, they may not even have a sales team yet. So when should you hire that first sales resource?
So sales resource is probably the best term for this, because actually my recommendation for a business owner, a small business owner, or anyone looking to scale their own sales team is to not hire a salesperson first. Now, as the owner of the business, you're always going to be the best salesperson because you care more than anyone else. You have more passion than anyone else. But what you don't have is time. So the first hire and the thing that I got straight on board immediately was get a very good sales operations or sales administration person. Because not only will they mean that you're not doing quotes, you're not involved in the procurement, but it also gives you more time to go, all right, what actually is our sales process start to finish? How do we build that into our CRM system? How do we structure our QBRs better? How do we define what our products and services are? It gives you that bandwidth to actually be able to create a sort of a mature sales function before you then make what is a big investment in is getting another salesperson on board. You know, they're not cheap. You've got to pay them for what they do for you, but there's no point in getting someone unless you've got a solid foundation to help them succeed and for them to be the best that they can be.
Okay. So you spoke about your day one kind of hire. You had a sales support administrative person. At what stage should you look to hire the next person after that?
I would be looking at hiring an account manager when you've probably got about 30 companies on board. It depends on the company size, obviously, and not necessarily what they do, but definitely their size. If they're 35 user companies, maybe not. But if they're about 20, 25, then 30 would probably be about right. One thing I would say is plan well in advance because in my experience, an account manager, especially if you're trying to hire, graduates or young people to train them up, they're not going to be fully effective at being a good account manager or a good new business person for 9 months, is my experience. And that is a very intensive training process. So although you need to be going, okay, what is my growth plan? What am I expected to bring in over the next year or two? At what point do I need an account manager because there's too many accounts? And then hire at least 6 months ahead of that, knowing that, you've got a big training process to go through and they are going to be learning off you. But it would be probably about that size, but I would keep new business on the owner because, as I said, owner's got the most passion, owner understands the business the best, they're the best person to continue doing the new business. The account management needs a solid pair of hands.
So a key part there is about planning. Lots of business owners, that's not like their favourite thing to do in a day.
No, it's never fun. But I think, that was really helpful for me having gone through the stage of seeing a business scale. And I remember one year we grew, this was a previous company, mid-sold business, we grew about 35% in a year. And it wasn't planned for, and that put a lot of pressure over not only just, service and operations, but also on the sales side. Couldn't keep up. There were too many clients. They all needed quarterly review meetings. There was a lot of demand. It meant procurement was a problem and how to build devices became a problem. So I think building your business under what is your sales plan, be realistic on that. What is the growth going to be like, or what are you hoping to get to over a year? And then how does everything else fit underneath that? How many engineers do you need? How much back-end procurement do you need? What's invoicing going to look like at that? And then building all your structure from there. But the sales planning has to lead the process, really. And you can review it 6 months and go, maybe we're not on plan. What does that mean for future hires then? What does that mean against our hiring plan? But yeah, it is all has to be led off what your sales is going to be, which means you need an effective sales team, which is always a fun one.
So where you work out, hey, this is what we want to grow by in the next year, you're saying essentially what people should be planning for is looking at what monthly revenue figure the sales needs to hit and how many sales resources you need within that to hit it. Is that part of the planning process you go through?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's difficult to do when you haven't hired an account manager before because you don't know realistically how much are they going to bring in, because they're not going to be as good as you to start with. Hopefully they're going to outstrip you, but I think that is difficult to kind of forecast. But I would base it on previous sales. Hopefully you're recording all of this kind of stuff. I would base it on that, and then for the first year, definitely look at lowering those targets a little bit so you can be a little bit safer in what your hiring demands are underneath. But yeah, build it based on those sales.
So you talked about those key roles, sort of sales admin, and then the account manager. What would those roles look like? So if someone was starting off today and thinking, right, okay, I'm getting overwhelmed, or we're not hitting target, I need a sales admin. What is a sales admin?
I think for a sales admin, you need someone that is very diligent, very detailed. They appreciate, what they enjoy is having a big list at the beginning of the day and smashing through it, ticking things off that list, following a process end to end, closing things off. Because what they're going to be doing is they're going to be following up from the meetings that you've done. They're going to be sending the quotes. In our industry, we're very lucky that there's tons of sales come through that have nothing to do with a salesperson. The salesperson may maintain the relationship, but there's all these sales coming through for new products, and we need this new service, we need this renewing, and we need this license adding. That shouldn't be a salesperson because that is administration stuff. It isn't salespeople, and they're best at bringing in, identifying opportunities that didn't previously exist and exploiting those and bringing in new sales. Your admin person is the one that's ticking these off, getting those quotes out, pushing them through, creating sales orders, creating POs, doing that kind of thing. And definitely reviewing renewals and agreements and things. So those are all captured as well. But that is a very detail-driven admin person. It's not your salesperson. And you shouldn't be paying those people necessarily the same. One isn't commission-based, but could have bonuses around what they do. But it isn't a commission-based salesperson.
So would they also, what I see out in the field, they almost like can become your PA as well. So they may organize everything up to the meeting and then organize everything away from the meeting.
Yeah.
Or is that a different person?
I think it does start like that. I've been really lucky that I've had an amazing person doing this for a very long time, who now is our business operations manager. So progressed into that role. But to start with, it kind of does work a bit like a PA. Less personal stuff, but more coming to meetings, following up off those meetings, making sure those actions are done. That's a really effective way of doing that, whilst you're the only salesperson. When you have an account manager, though, you wouldn't want this business admin person acting as that account manager's or that new business person's PA. It removes the responsibility a little bit. They're there to handle the admin and things, but the salesperson still needs to take ownership and do the work themselves. But it does, you're right, it does often, these roles start out as a PA, and then people may stay in that, or they may develop through the business as it grows.
So we've spoken a bit about kind of starting points, so hiring the sales admin support, then hiring an account manager. Let's kind of move up a gear, and you've obviously had a team with much larger people in it. Let's assume you're an MSP, you've got sort of 5 million of turnover, and now you've got a team of maybe, 2-3 account managers, and you've got the owner doing the sales. What's the next logical step there? What should people look to do from a leadership perspective around sales?
If you've got, 3 account managers.
Let's say you've got 3 account managers.
At this point, I'd be looking at, I would always, as a rule, keep account management and new business separate. I know people think there's the whole hunter-farmer argument, but in my view, they're 2 different people, they're 2 different sales processes, and they need to be managed differently. So I would, at that point, be looking at, okay, is there someone within that account management team who could potentially take on a bit more of a senior role? And their aim there is preferably someone that's more senior and experienced. So then they can remove a lot of the training demand, and maybe some of the daily, maybe one-to-ones and things like that you do on a weekly basis. So you start to put a bit more of a middle management into the account management side. I would also potentially be looking at that stage of, all right, new business at this stage, my sales administrator is probably incredibly busy, doing a lot. Now you're going to have a lot of accounts. They're not going to be doing the PA side, coming to new business meetings, which means the demand on the owner is quite high off new business, likely. So I'd be thinking, all right, maybe we get in a junior new business person. And they would start just attending meetings, doing all the follow-ups, learning in that way. But yeah, I think with account management and in our industry generally, technology changes so much, everything changes. There's a new service or a new thing every 6 months. So training and that development is just so important, especially for account managers, because they're advisors at the end of the day. They need to know what they're talking about. That creates a big demand on you if you're the only one doing that training and development. So if you can kind of sponsor someone that wants to do that and can start acting as a bit more of a senior manager, then yeah, that would definitely be the route I'd go down.
Thanks for that. So let's talk a bit about account managers. You said something you said there was interesting, that they're advisors. Can you explain a bit more about that? Because I think generally out there, people see account managers as just people that are selling stuff, right? So it sounds like you think differently. So it'd be good to understand.
Yeah, what is the account manager role?
Yeah, and I think that before we answer that, the big thing about our industry, and we're incredibly lucky, and anyone in sales in our industry is, they are bloody lucky, because in our industry, there is so much opportunity. And what I mean by opportunity isn't people going out and trying to throw everything against the wall and see what sticks and hope you're going to get sales. It's that people need this stuff. If you've picked your services and your product stack well, a client who has consumed all of your product stack and services is in the best position they can possibly be. And that is a thing that you need to drive home into account managers, because yes, fine, you may be commission orientated and you may be looking at sales, and that's great, but your job is to go and identify those opportunities, which are people's needs, and find their needs. And you should want everyone to have all services, because they're going to be in the best position they can be. In our world, it's, people either have the service from you, and then it means it's one point of contact, they know who's managing it, and there's that trust. They either have it from someone else, which means it's another person they need to speak to, another person they need to manage, it adds that burden, or they don't have it, and then there's a gap, especially when you're talking about security, reliability, all of that kind of thing.
So I've seen in larger companies where they try to just keep the account managers just doing sales, and where, in the past, maybe if a client's got a problem, they would speak to that account manager and say, hey, I've got a problem with X, Y, Z. Have you seen that work, or are there any downfalls to that methodology? Generally in much larger companies where, you've got a team of 15, 20 salespeople, all of a sudden salespeople are like, you need to be focused on hitting a number. You need to be focused on sales. What's your experience of that?
I think it does tend to happen in bigger companies. I think it's a more of like a SaaS channel sales team, and it's very American driven. I don't think that model works, and I don't think it necessarily drives the kind of culture that you'd want in an MSP. From my perspective, the way I've always done account management is they are advisors. So when I bring on a new account manager, there is a 6-month probation training plan that's really structured. And this goes through them being able to draw a network diagram and identify potential weaknesses and risks within that network diagram. It's about going, okay, if they have SaaS application, what are we thinking about there? What's the reliability? What's the integrations we can do? What they need to be able to understand is a whole sort of IT and technology environment, and be able to identify all the potential opportunities, which are just ways we can help in that environment. As a result, they're not technical, because they would never know how to actually do anything technical. But they can advise because they understand all these things within an environment. How can we improve that? How can we reduce that risk? How can we make that more redundant? That's their job. That adds value. And I think a thing that a lot of MSPs forget, especially when they get a little bit bigger, is this account management side and this quarterly review meeting. That's part of the service that someone's paying you to do. It's not something for you to go and sell. It's an opportunity for you to deliver value and deliver service. Part of that is advice, but part of that is also maybe reviewing service tickets, looking at trends, looking at how do we reduce any problems, or even giving feedback to the client on how they can work with you better, because it is a partnership. So I've always massively encouraged account managers to be those advisors and to be those advocates of the company. They're not just there to sell. Definitely not.
I think that's a great point, because someone starting off on this journey that wants, let's say, their first account manager, they go and hire someone that's done customer service or account manager role, potentially probably not in the IT industry.
Yeah.
And what they do is they give them the keys to the castle and go and see customers.
Yeah. Yeah, that doesn't... And I would always say hire someone that has been customer service. Yeah, even if that's someone that worked in a bar or, worked in a restaurant, being public facing, put up with crap from the public, that's definitely helpful.
So I think it's a great point there about planning ahead and training for that, because often what I see is someone will hire someone that's got some customer service type role. They maybe even been an account manager, but they're not in IT. What they do is they throw them in a seat, throw a grenade at them and go, let's crack on.
Yeah?
Yeah. So another thing then about hiring this person, we're talking about, it's going to be someone that's got maybe some customer experience. What about other key things that you're going to want to look for there that isn't just they're good at talking?
Yeah, so I think it's hard to do this when you're first hiring. And I think, we can go into interview techniques and things if you want, but I would always do, second interview would always be a role-based interview. So I would go, here's a load of information, here's a scenario of a client, here's a couple of our services. Now I'm going to come in and I want you to act like I'm that client. Because that shows me that, one, they can assimilate information well and hold it in their heads and they can remember key points about that service or key figures, but then they can also have a conversation as if I'm that person, and hopefully they've identified a couple pain points or opportunity points straight away. But I'm also looking for how they structure that conversation, because if it's all over the place, that's not a structured approach and it doesn't show to me that intelligence. What I would want to see is someone going, okay, maybe starting with some small talk, but then going, but let's talk about the business. What are you looking for? How does that impact you? What would be the impact of that on your business? Drilling down into what's actually important for them before even talking about the services. Because I would like to try and throw someone off where they go, that thing, I haven't even said that's important to me, so don't talk about it. But if they try and talk about it, I'm like, that's not the right approach. It should be what's actually relevant to the client and the opportunities that are there for you.
So it's a bit more advanced than getting someone to sell you a pen then.
Little bit more advanced, although that works,
So what about the fit into the team? We can, I see it and I've done it myself where you hire somebody, they're in there for maybe too long, maybe it's a year and a half, and you've not acted on the fact that they weren't actually like part of the culture and they didn't have the right values.
Yeah, and I think with a sales team, it should be easier, you'd hope. It's difficult in some regards, which is they're usually quite social people. Which is always a great thing, and you should definitely encourage all of that. But they also naturally will work quite independently of one another and be driven at their own independent targets. So I think a way to get around that is I would always give a team target. And that's irrelevant of who is bringing that in, but the whole team has a target. We measure that weekly and monthly, and there will be some kind of a benefit at the end of a quarter for the team if they all hit that target. And then those benefits aren't just money. They're, let's go out to a nice restaurant, or let's do something fun like that, something that they want to do, because it creates the right culture, it creates that bond between them. But I want a team of salespeople that, yes, are independently driven, but are supporting each other. And if people go, well, I've hit my target, I'm clocking out, that's not really what I'd be looking for. I'd want someone going, but we haven't hit our team target. Right, how can I support other people in the team to make sure they get that target? And then it becomes a culture of support and training, and that's when it really just starts to flourish, and you can take a little bit of a step back because they're supporting each other. At the end, if that happens, the perfect way you can see that is sales meetings on a weekly basis should run themselves, because people are cross-examining one another, and you put the structures in place to make that happen.
So you talked a little bit earlier about strategic meeting with a customer. It's a part of the service. You should be adding value. We in consultancy see lots of different structures and frameworks and deliveries of a strategic business review. What do you think works?
So it really depends on, you should have a standard framework, and that's something that you fall back to every single time. But my recommendation would be larger businesses identify who is in what kind of a role, because there's no point talking about strategy and roadmaps and future planning to potentially the office manager if they are not the ones making those decisions and aren't at that level. Whereas, same thing, there's no point going about service ticket analysis, service trends, license reviews, asset replacement life cycles to a business owner, because they're not going to give a shit about any of that. We allowed to swear?
Yeah, we're allowed to.
Okay, cool, good. They don't give a shit about any of that, and you'll immediately lose their interest, and they will, they're the ones paying the bills, and they'll go, well, these meetings aren't they're not helpful to me. They don't bring any value, and then they've stopped attending them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great result, because a great point, not result. We don't want that result. It's a great point, because what I hear a lot about is, but Darren, we want to do these, but nobody wants to meet us.
Yeah, no one wants to meet because you're boring.
Yes.
Right? They don't want to hear what you've got to talk about, which is what you're saying, right?
Yes, you need to read the room, but you need to know who you're speaking to.
Yeah.
And it's very important that you do all of your job. And I'll say to an account manager, fine, I know this person isn't going to care about any of that stuff. No. That doesn't mean you don't do it. You do it, you put it in a platform or a system, it's there. Your job is to review all of that for them ahead of the meeting, distill it down, and tell them the top points that they need to make a decision on. Because your job is just to help them make an informed decision. It's not about boring with all the stuff, giving them loads of data and information so they feel they have decision paralysis. This doesn't help anyone.
Back like 15 years ago, people used to bring like this stack of paper into a business meeting, and you'd put it on the table and say, right, we need to go for this stuff, but I've condensed it in one page for you. It used to be the same stack that people used to take again and again.
Pop it in the bin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think if you can get some kind of online platform, or even, you can do it simply and just put a pack together in a SharePoint external share or something like that, something to leave with them, because a very important part about a QBR is that you make notes. We spoke about this. Here are my actions. I will be doing this. You will be doing this. I think setting tasks for your client is completely reasonable, and it has to happen because it is a partnership. We can't make change unless they take action. So you need all of these documented, but because of the industry you're in, it's also really important when talking about cybersecurity and backups and things. If you're telling someone, by the way, if you go down, we can't recover you in maybe 5 days. Or, by the way, you don't even have backup of your 365, or you don't have this, stuff can get deleted, or you're open to a cyber attack. They don't have to go for your service. And that's absolutely fine. Salespeople want yeses or they want nos. We don't want anything in the between. They don't have to go for your service, but you, as an advisor, have to tell them about the risk that they're opening their business up for. And you have to document it. Because guess what? If someone's business goes down, they're going to be really angry on the end of the phone. You don't throw it in their face, but you need proof to say, guys, we spoke about this. I've been doing my job. You made a decision not to do this, having been informed about all the risks. What do you want us to do here? Remember, I'm just an advisor. You have to make the hard decision.
That's a great point about having that documented as well. What I see a lot of is we make the decision of yes or no, which you mentioned you want a yes or no. We make that decision without asking the question, so then we don't even comment about that service. So we believe they don't have the budget for EDR, for instance. Yes. So we don't believe they got the budget, so we don't open the conversation because we already answered the no. Well, then when they do get something that you should have mentioned, you have no evidence to prove.
Oh, I just didn't think you'd be interested. Why wouldn't I have been interested?
Tell us a bit about how you use video in the QBR process. We had a video chap on in a previous podcast, Jonathan Edwards, really nice guy. He uses video to educate people, but I think you were telling me earlier about how you use videos for some QBR elements. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so when we have a QBR, we've put a platform together that makes it very clear of what has to be done by salespeople, and that's an important point. Your system should always be logical, linear, and make it very clear what people have to do, or they won't do it. But ours is you fill out the task list, which is very clear. You create an external share, but in the body of that, we put a video, and in that video, someone after the meeting will summarize what we've spoken about. Because not only is that a great capture in time, and that summary, is helpful, but they might be passing that on to someone else. And if you're explaining about why someone needs something or selling something, you're the best person to do it. Don't rely on someone else to sell within their company for you. But also it's just a better way to condense information into it. So after every QBR, we record a video, we put it in this platform, and then we share that with the client. But I'll encourage account managers and, do it for new business as well. If you're trying to explain something that's bigger than a couple paragraphs in an email, chuck it in a video, because it'll be 3-4 minutes. It will explain it in a much better way. And you can actually sell and get some emotion across in a video, where with an email, it's easy to just disregard something.
Yeah, and I think people don't read emails anyway these days. They read the first paragraph and get bored by the time they're down the middle and don't make it to the end, right? Especially if it's a long one.
And you can read emails differently, can't you? Depending on what emotion you're in, or where you are, or what you're doing.
One little word can change the context and the way that can be appreciated or understood as well. So it's a really risky way. I wouldn't ever tell people to try and justify a service or sell on an email. Like, definitely not.
And people build rapport, relationships, and buy from people. So why not put your video up there and buy from people?
It's helpful for new business in that way, because you don't have that relationship yet. So, you can use it for prospecting, or even if it's just following up off an initial call, doing a video, just being like, hey, we spoke about this, you mentioned these points. I think that would be really valuable. This is what we can offer to help with that. I've left you some information. Please get back in touch. That, it takes 2 minutes, but then you've got that personal approach, and other people aren't doing it, you'll stand out. And that's the whole point.
So let's talk a bit about new business. Let's assume you've worked out a way of how to get leads in.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about your kind of top tips to how to win new business. What would you say they are?
I think top tips on how to win new business would be it sounds really simple, but listen. Because, most of where I've seen new business people is they can't wait. They're chomping at the bit to get to their pitch. And they just want to bam, 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 we do this. It's amazing. Whereas you could have, say, your pitch is 100%. You could only talk about 10%, and you could still win that business if that 10% is actually relevant to their needs. So listening, asking questions, drilling down into, what are these problems? What are you having? And a lot of salespeople will kick off and go, tell me what you don't like about your current provider. That starts that conversation on a negative foot immediately. And people are like, oh, okay, you're trying to do that sales thing for me, I get it. But if you say, tell me what you like about your current provider, that's suddenly a positive shift. And inevitably, people will talk about all the stuff they don't like anyway, but you've changed the conversation, and then they feel they trust you a little bit more because you've been positive. And it's all about getting people to relax and open up and tell you more about their problems. Because as we said before, all we're doing is trying to identify people's issues, and we're trying to fit services to them. If they don't fit, they don't fit. But if they do, then brilliant. And we only need to talk about those things that they actually care about. If I start talking about ITIL processes on the service desk, but they're interested in the fact that they're not getting the right advice around cybersecurity, it's pointless. They don't care about that. We don't need to talk about it.
Yeah, you talked about having that almost that energy that you want to get in before you got the actual answer.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of rulings around how many questions you ask? Because I hear people where they ask a question, they get a pain, they're on that pain. Yeah.
I would the way that I would used to teach this is keep asking, and you should be writing them down. And then you should go, okay, what I've heard from you is that you've got this problem, that you're struggling with this, you got that. If it's okay with you, in the next 5 minutes, can I go through and tell you how we generally address these problems, or how our service can benefit those? Because you asked them if it's okay for you to sell. I didn't actually ask that, but it's basically what you've done. You said, I've heard, I've listened, I've understood, therefore you've gained trust. And then you're going, now can I take some of your time to sell to you? And they say yes, and then they've opened up and they're willing to listen, they're actually engaged in the conversation, but you should be trying to get as many of those things as you can. And that should be your new business sales pitch. Your pitch isn't something that's on a bit of paper. You should be able to identify amazing parts of your service that will fit people's needs.
One of the things that's happened is that everyone's moved from working in an office to working from home, right? So in these new business type pitches you're having, are you seeing a lot more of them initially remotely? And do you try to get in front of people where you can, or is it okay to do everything remotely?
I would always push for an in-person meeting. And yeah, it has, since COVID, it's got a lot harder to do it, especially if people are in and out of offices, or maybe don't even have offices, but at minimum, video call, at an absolute minimum. But every single time I would always push to be in front of them. And if you can't, then videos are another good way to make that more personal. But nothing beats going in and actually meeting someone. Again, it puts people at ease, it builds that relationship quicker, and all it is about making people feel comfortable and safe around you to open up, because that's what you need. You need people to open up so then you can understand what problems they're having and how you can solve them.
What we see a lot with is we're not actually getting a lot of leads. So we might get one a month, let's say, and that means we're not very good at delivering off the back of them because we don't have a lot of practice. What would you think is the best steps to new business and timelines between it?
So I think on that, one of the biggest things, just to make a point, is that seeing MSPs is ones that don't get regular leads don't know how to actually, deal with them when they come in. So many don't pick up the phone, or so many have that call go through to the engineers.
An apprentice.
Yeah, an apprentice, because generally in some MSPs, it is the apprentices that are picking up the phones. No offense to apprentices, they can be amazing at technical, but you don't want this valuable, amazing lead that could be a big thing for your business going through to the person you least want to be doing that call. So I think firstly, it's about, where do your leads come from? How do they come into your businesses? How are they channeled to what people, and also, if that person isn't there, who is the fallback? And make sure that they actually know what to do with those leads. It would always be, your aim is to book a call. Like, you shouldn't be leaving any lead with that, whether that's inbound through website, contact form, or coming in via phone or whatever. Your aim is to book a meeting, and it should always be to book an in-person meeting. Everyone in the company who is involved in that should know. The aim is to book a date, get a meeting booked in. In terms of timescales and how long these work, it kind of depends with different types of leads. So if you're getting hot or warm inbound leads, which we all want, they're like Google ads or organic or referrals or whatever, they can go really, really quick. Whereas if you're doing outbound through email messaging, multimedia platforms, whatever, that's colder. That's going to be a lot of a longer sales process. It can be up to like 9 months, a year. But the general approach that I've seen on inbound leads that are more warm is, I would say you probably have 3 conversations. So initial call, and your aim for that initial call is qualifying the lead to make sure, okay, do they actually need our services? Are we going to be a right fit for them? Because, a lot of companies would just say, yeah, they're definitely for us. But no, they need to be a right fit for your MSP, and you need to be a right fit for them. So qualifying that, making sure they're happy. And, I will personally give pricing on that call, because I think if you've gone through, pricing's at the very end of the conversation, but you've identified, are they interested? Do they want your service? Okay, last point of qualifying is price. There's no point in wasting any more time if they're not happy with your pricing. I know that's contentious. A lot of people say, go as far as you can without giving pricing, but hopefully you get loads of inbound leads and you need to manage your time better. But then it would be proper meeting where you're demoing service, you're showing them how you do things, and then there'd be a follow-up to close down any further questions with a proposal after second meeting, and maybe an infographic after the first call, something like that to keep them interested.
So it sounds like speed is of essence, right, with leads, right?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, you've got to think that if you're getting inbound leads, they're not just going to you. You'd hope they were only just going to you, but they're not. They're probably going to like 3, 4, 5 other companies. If you're the first one to speak to them, you're immediately higher up, because you get the opportunity to educate them straight off the bat, and educating them on how services work, how outsourcing works, that puts you in a better position. So yeah, speed is always important.
So I overheard a conversation. I want to take your take on it. So very large MSP, and they were trying to work out, how do we get more sales? They've got investors in this business, and the investors are saying, hey, you need to put more people in the sales team so they have, so you've got more people who are delivering this quota. So their idea was, if we keep on adding more salespeople, then they'll all bring in 100K of margin, and therefore we need more revenue, we add another salesperson. Have you ever seen that work? And what are the things that people should consider really before adding additional heads in their sales team to try and grow their revenue?
I haven't seen it work. I know some companies will do that if they're investor backed, and they'll just hire a ton of grads and they'll just chuck them on their limited training and go. That can be effective for new business, mainly just for, trying to call up and book meetings for more experienced people, which can be an effective thing. I think the hardest thing is getting in front of someone, getting a meeting booked. So lots of juniors all going out, trying to book meetings for someone more senior. That I've seen that be effective. It's a very expensive way to do it, which is why it's usually done by investor-backed companies, because it's a lot to be spending, but that can be helpful. I think in our industry, because yes, there's obviously growth through new business, but there's a huge amount of growth once you've got a client on board, once you can, add all your additional services to those clients. Adding extra account managers won't help you at all. If anything, it will be detrimental, because your account managers will start going, well, now I don't have as much opportunity. I had 50 accounts before, now you've given me 25. And that directly relates to how much I'm going to take home at the end of the day. So you can end up diluting your sales team essentially and losing good people. And you will then get your account managers being desperate. And that is the worst thing. And it shows through in people's eyes in meetings. If someone's like pretty pushy for a sale, you've lost the respect of that client. You've lost the relationship. And that is only part of an account manager's job. So yeah, you can't have account managers being needy. So you should give them a lot of accounts, a lot of manage, a lot of work, and then judge it off there.
So you've been on a pretty impressive journey throughout different roles within, especially the sales operations side of an MSP. What do you think would be like a key turning point of something that either you didn't work, you would never do again, or something you did amazingly work?
I think key turning point was hiring. I've made some very, very bad hires. And I think a couple things from that are firstly, realization. And I think, I don't want to add to this guy's ego, but I think one thing that Mitt said to me, which it stayed with me from when I was very junior, was if you are keeping someone on the team that isn't performing, and I always want someone to succeed and I want to give them as much support as I can, but there's a limit to that. And what you can't be doing is spending all your time focusing on this person that is underachieving, because then you're not spending time on the people that are overachieving or doing really well. If you think about where your best use of time is, it's on the people that are doing well. Those are the people you want to be encouraging and mentoring and improving. And yes, you need to support people as much development, but there needs to be a line. And I think that was a big turning point for me, to be able to go, okay, there is a line. And then as a result, building a very effective training and probation plan. That took me a very long time to get to. But once I put that in place, the sales team flew. It made such a difference. By the end of 6 months, they're as effective as someone that had been doing that for like 2 years. And then these people have since gone on to work in much larger MSPs or, be very high level in AWS. That training process, that probation induction process, that was probably the biggest change that I saw.
So in order to get a high performing team, it sounds like you have to invest time in them, mentoring them, especially the performers, not the non-performers. Get rid of non-performers after a period of time where you've tried to make them into performers. What are the other things you think you need to do in order to get a high performing team?
I think from the get-go, and again, this comes in from the initial training, that 6-month sort of induction plan that I used to do, is you want to show that you're there to support, but you can't, hold their hand. Like you're not there to do their job for them. So, without going into the details, my plan used to be like once a month, there are certain KPIs, certain tasks they had to accomplish every month. We took them through them. They had access to all the resources needed. They could ask for help at any point, and they knew exactly what they needed to achieve. But through that month, I'm not asking them, what's your progress on this? Have you done it? Because at the end of the month, they're presenting back to me to prove that they have accomplished these tasks and they've hit these KPIs and they've got the right score on presentations and things like that. So that creates a sense of ownership and independence. And I think that was really important and went into then that these people, they knew that they had to achieve these things. They knew that it was on them and they were responsible for it. But it also gave them a sense of achievement and the ownership on all of that. And I think that makes a really big impact. And then we continue to do the thing and hold that forever. So in sales meetings, for example, they would start the sales meeting once we'd done KPIs. They would start sales meeting, go around every salesperson. They'd say where they're currently at in target and where they're going to get to. And then we do a quick review of their ops. And if their ops board are not up to date, they don't have next steps, their stages are not at the right stage, it's really clear. And everyone in that room will hold them accountable for it, which it creates this sort of
self-accountability.
Yeah.
So, NJ, it'd be great having you on the podcast. Sure, our listeners are going to have a lot of information there to take away. Let's just think about what's our key takeaways from this conversation. If we just think about what's the key thing you're thinking of that someone needs to do.
I think it's about having effective quality review meetings. Everyone talks about it, but people don't realize that it's part of the service that you're already offering to your client. They have to be valuable to make people want to come to them. And it's also important for your client to understand they have to attend them, and they should, because you're giving them valuable insight and valuable information to help them make an informed decision.
Yeah, I think my key takeaway is really that when you have somebody new who's starting your organization, especially in sales, you need to have a formalized onboarding process. And it could take up to 9 months to get them, operational. But 6 months, to most people, will be like, wow, that's too long. But actually, 6 months is a really good time to invest in somebody to make them successful in their role.
I think a key takeaway for me is about you empowering that team of people to be self-sufficient on themselves. You talked about how they're going to work together and they're going to check on each other and they're going to ask each other questions about where they're at with their numbers and pipelines. And it's a part of a team effort, rather than being the owner that's got to lead that.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening today, guys. Please like, subscribe, or comment below. If you've got any questions or anything you want to know more about, please comment in the box. And I'm sure one of us will be more than happy to come back to you.
And if there's any other sales-related information that you guys want, just put it in the comments and they'll do some future episodes about that.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of Scale Up, don't forget to like and subscribe. If there are any topics that you would like to see on a future episode of Scale Up, please leave a comment below.